All right. We're looking at the illustration here. Many of you guys have seen these on my LinkedIn posts. Thought I would go through and show how I think about these problems and maybe some of the process behind it. But let's just walk through the one that was posted today, mapping business goals. So thought, hey, we've got a new board that I'm creating just because I've outgrown the last one. I'm on my fourth board here, and you can see the way I assemble these ideas. All these are hand done, and I do them fairly rapidly with Illustrator. Illustrator is still my design tool of choice, and work through with line work that I've done and repurpose some of the pieces that I go through. So thought I'd go through the mapping business goals today because it's just shown up in a lot of my business coaching calls as well as some of my conversations and client calls supporting businesses as they're sort of working through these problems. And so today we're talking about mapping business goals. And what I thought we could do is to sort of articulate what is happening here and what is important in this illustration. So we'll just zoom in here. This, you can see this is yesterday's. This ties directly to what we're doing in Glare. Glare is our open decision framework that allows designers to use skills that we're developing to create better workflows using AI. Those are still, new and interesting to work with. We have a tool called Helio, which we also collect a bunch of data and we bring that data into our decision making. So a lot of the context here is set by understanding how to use design data in some of these workflows. But what we're looking at here is what I would say an ecosystem or a life cycle that happens in a design problem that also goes haywire. And designers typically in these processes, they let the business dictate what success looks like. And so the post I had created was specifically addressing maybe design leads and product who are trying to own more of the decision making, but also try to shape where the decisions are going based on what is given to them as a business problem. So when we talk about what a business goal is, we've defined it, and this is coming directly from how we've defined it in Glare, is different levers in the business that they're using to create a better business outcome. And that outcome could be driven by marketing activities, technical activities, improving on the operations front. But here's a list that we've defined as a way to start that conversation. There's probably more, but we've found that these are great ones to start with. And you can start asking stakeholders specifically, what are they trying to accomplish? And here's the thing that I've found, that when designers are trying to support the business doesn't always know how to articulate these goals. And so it probably behooves designers to take a look at these and challenge the assumptions that stakeholders are making by asking, okay, what are we trying to do by improving this workflow or this onboarding? Are we trying to grow scales, or are we trying to attract new customers? Because those are going to have a material impact on the design choices that are being made within those workflows. So if you're trying to grow sales, perhaps, you're trying to find the right customers and you're being more articulate about who gets into your application or what it is that they're going to do in that application. If you're trying to attract new customers, maybe you're at the top of the funnel and you want more people to expose your app to. And so attention is really important. And so how you do that in an onboarding experience is going to change pretty radically based on what your business goals are. But when we look at this, there's an opportunity here to really shape these conversations around growth, retention, user experience, efficiency, and operations. One of these is fine. You can start there and ask stakeholders when you're working with them how they see this unfolding. What is their business goal to grow sales? Like, what is the supporting mechanism? How are they going to drive traffic into this application, this onboarding experience to grow the sales, right? And part of that is articulating, what are the channels they're going to use to do that, and where are people coming from, and what is the landing pages and the things that are going to drive that. So having context to that's going to be super important. Now, when we think about design, understanding the business problem, we have to map it back to something, because we're not actually working on the business problem And it's not necessarily design's responsibility to create the business goal or even define sort of what the lever is in that business goal. But what we can do is start to shape how users fit into this and what it is that users need from this. And if there's a clear disconnect, this is maybe not a thing. Now, you could say, businesses should be engaged in generative research to figure out what users are needing in their space. And I totally agree with that. Most business problems, though, are driven based on market research or competitors. And so designers are often given these problems from this posture. Not saying it's the best, but you're not going to move a business problem by starting with a user need that the stakeholder doesn't really care about. So what we need to do is be able to translate that into something that really works on the user side, but we need to understand what the business goal is and shape that business goal based on the intent. And oftentimes that is not very clear. And so you've got user needs that drive user outcomes, and product outcomes are the experiential parts that can be mapped to, say, the application or the analytics. And the business outcomes are those, say, business results of growing sales. Like, is it more money per user? Is it overall top level revenue growth? These are, going to be specific to how you define what the business goal is. The business doesn't care about the design result. What the business cares about is the business result. And so design needs to understand the context of their success is going to be dictated based on a business result. And so ultimately, design needs to map back to that business result and show causal or correlative relationships between the activities that design is doing with these business goals. Now, many times that won't be mapped one-to-one, and I don't think it has to be all the time, but it's a mapping, not a direct translation. These mapping components, user needs, user outcomes, product outcomes, and business goals, are a framework for creating alignment so that people can see that there are activities happening each one of these things, and there is some result that is driving that business result. The other part here, when we start looking at this, is your workflows. In a workflow, we have sales, marketing, product, engineering, and I've purposely left design off of this because design is typically a co-partner across these functions. And so when design tries to create some sort of process or workflow that's supposed to fit with these stakeholders, it's often at the sort of opposite of what the business is trying to do, because the business has 90 other things to work on. And so it sees design as sort of an output that needs to be put into their initiative or plan. And that just isn't going to work. Design can be a co-partner that works more holistically across these functions to create value, but you're not going to be designers aren't going to be invited into that conversation unless they clearly articulate that they're interested in these business problems to surface ways that design can help. And that's ultimately in these loops you see here is that design is going to help achieve those business goals when we're improving the user outcomes, those experiences that users are trying to desperately sometimes get from a product or service. Design isn't necessarily going to make things better or differentiate the product. That is a goal, but ultimately, sometimes just the mere fact of having the function or having a technical solution is enough. So design needs to articulate where it's creating value. Otherwise, it loses credibility. And so ultimately, when we're looking at this, when design leads and product leads come to me, there's often a breakdown here at this level where the business hasn't fully articulated what they're trying to do, and there is no mapping back to the success of what design is trying to accomplish for them. So if that isn't established or there isn't some kind of alignment there, design is always going to be chasing its tail, trying to solve problems that could be irrational. Sometimes our timelines are incredibly unrealistic, and the ability to measure what design is is contributing to might be completely lost because there's no consideration of how design is actually improving the business goal. So I thought I would just talk about this. There's probably more I could talk about. If you're interested in this, I can go more into these, but ultimately, I think design is really a cool, um, function in a business or, it's both a method, a function, a deliverable, design is broad like that, but, there I think there's no better time to be a designer. It's just getting these parts right in ways that support the business, and those designers that are able to do this are gonna see measurable success in their businesses as well as their individual contributions. So this is another episode of Glaringly Obvious. So excited to be able to keep doing this with you guys.